Welcome back, players and collectors, to my channel, Ren's Collectibles. Today, I'm going to be talking about my experience this weekend at my very first Lorcana set championship for Ursula's return. Overall, I had a blast. It was so much fun. I was happy I was able to go participate and partake in it. But I kind of wanted to walk through my experience for anybody who may not know what it's like, or just wants to see what somebody's experience is, I guess. So we're gonna walk through that. But there's a little background is I have been eyeing this set championship at my local game store for a good month or so when they put it on the schedule, and kind of just debating back and forth, like, should I do it? Should I not do it? I've never played in a competitive event for Lorcana before. I don't have a very meta deck. So I debated about it, but I eventually set my sights on it and said, you know what, if I have that day off and I can go, I'm just going to go. And it worked out the way. I had the day off, so I plan on going. However, my brain is in normalcy mode. I'm a creature of habit and routine. So usually every Saturday at 4 p.m. is our competitive Lorcana League. And my mind was just, when I woke up yesterday, my mind was just in the mode of, it's 4 p.m., we're going to go. But the event actually started at 1. So we went out and we were having a little bit of a family day, and it kind of clicked close to 1 o'clock that, oh my gosh, the tournament is starting soon. So I had to rush and get out there. All that to say, I was a little bit late, and I did have to take a first round loss because of that. So that's on me. But I did get to play the rest of the 4 rounds because there was 5 rounds total. And, I honestly impressed myself. I did way better than I thought I would do, and I was happy about that. So anyway, we get going. My deck is Brooms, and I'm playing the Brooms deck. The deck is so much fun, and for a beginner, I highly recommend it. It's an easy to learn, easy to get going kind of deck. There's no advanced mechanics to it, really, so it's a good beginner deck in my opinion. And I'll put my deck list up here so you guys can see exactly what I was playing. It's a little bit unconventional. I added some cards in, I took some cards out, and there's some cards, like some Brooms, I didn't have full sets of, so I couldn't play them. And that's why I had to kind of switch in and swap out some cards. I, after the fact, realized I should have swapped out some additional cards and maybe put in, some Bruno or maybe some Queen's Castle instead of Casa Madrigal. But it is what it is. That's all hindsight. We learned some stuff along the way, and that's okay. But anyway, we get there. The first round had actually just kicked off, within 10 minutes of me arriving there, and unfortunately had to take that round 1 loss, but it was okay. I had to do my deck list because I forgot my slip at home. So I go and I sit down and I'm going through my deck to write out my list. And the very first thing, there's one guy there. I've never seen him before. He doesn't play locally. He's literally just traveling store to store, competing in these tournaments, trying to win as much as he can. And he looks at me and he goes, Brooms. And then scoffed and kind of went on with his game. He's in the middle of a game, and I'm like, you really took the time to say that? And why? But it's okay, if we end up playing each other, you're going to win anyway if you're that competitive. So why are you worried about it? But spoiler alert, we never even played each other, so I don't know why he was worried about it from the beginning. But outside of that one person, the whole event was just such a fantastic experience. It was so good. But anyway, I get going, I get my deck list down, and I submit it. I'm ready, I'm waiting, and I think it was the 19th or 20th person in there. So there was 20 people total in the event, and I think there was a few others that had actually signed up and they just never showed up. But in playing, there was 20 people, and I took the round 1 loss, and it is what it is. But second round, we get going, and I sit down with my opponent. First time she'd ever played competitive Lorcana 2, so I'm like, okay, good. At least I've got somebody who's brand new to it as well that we can learn together. We're not going to be over competitive or anything like that. So that, it ended up working out fine. She steamrolled me. I'm just going to call it what it is. She was playing an Amber Steel song deck, princess deck. She said it was a princess deck. There were some princesses in there. But it was a highly song deck. That's what she utilized the most, and it crushed me. I could not figure out how to get around the songs. I would get a couple brooms out, and I would try to get a Merlin or a Mickey Mouse out, or not a Merlin, a Yen Sid or a Mickey Mouse out, and she would just wipe the board with grab your swords or, just demolish me. I stood no chance. I think in the first game was the closest I got to competing, and I got to 12 lore, and that was basically because I think there's 2 turns she did not play a song, and she has Ariel and Belle and all these characters that just heal and recover from songs and also boost themselves, and the sleepy flute, all that good stuff. So I think I was only able to get 12 lore because there was 2 turns where she could not get songs, and it allowed me to get a couple brooms out, a Merlin out, and I think I even had my Sorcerer Tower out at one point, and I got 1 use out of it, and then board wiped the next, and I'm just like, oh, okay, here we go. Second game was kind of, more of the same, except for I didn't do as good. I think I got 7 lore, and she hit 20 so fast. I just couldn't get anything on the board, and I couldn't keep anything. So that was a very harsh first experience in competitive for me, even though it was against a beginner. I believe she ended up placing like 9th or 10th overall. So honestly, not a bad player, a bad opponent. So just missed the top 8 cut. But, it was pretty fast. I think we still had 30 minutes left on the timer when she beat me in game 2. So we had a little time to learn and to kind of think about some strategy, which I did, and moved on to round 3 for another matchup. This time it was actually against one of the guys that I play in my local league, casual nights on Mondays. So I kind of knew what his deck was, but it was a villain deck. It was a red-yellow villain deck. Very, very good. We actually played each other before with our decks, so we both knew what the other opponent was trying to do. And it's funny because I had said to him probably a week or 2 ago in our casual battle that, hey, you should get some of these Queen of Hearts. Just stack a bunch of them up. Don't even attack, challenge, or whatever. You just get, if you have a couple Queen of Hearts, you can get on the field, and then you just go for one big push of lore. You're going to overwhelm your opponent. And then it just so happens that that's what he was trying to do this whole time. And it about worked. It did work once. The first game I took, I got my first win, which was fantastic. But the brooms just came out so fast. I think I mulliganed 4 cards at the very beginning, and 3 of those 4 cards I got back were low-cost brooms, 1 or 2 cost brooms. And I'm like, okay, I have Yen Sid in my hand, and I also have Sorcerer Tower in my hand. This could work out well. And it did. So I was able to, get a couple of the cheap brooms out at the very beginning, first couple turns. I think by turn 3 or 4, I had Yen Sid out, and then I had 3 or 4 brooms out. And then turn 4 or 5, put the Sorcerer's Tower out, move everybody in there, and I quested, I want to say for 14 lore in 1 turn. And I had already had about 6 lore at that point, so I won by, I think, turn 5. It was a very fast-paced first game, and he was doing exactly what I was saying. Just trying to get a couple of those queens out. I think he had 2 queens out, and he had 2 Gaston, yeah. And so he was kind of building up that board state too, and he took out a couple of my brooms while I was doing it because he knew what I was trying to do, and he could see the pieces coming together, but it wasn't enough for him. Then game 2, I could not get my Sorcerer's Tower. I could not get any of my Mickey Mouse. All I had was 1 Yen Sid, and I got a couple brooms, and he cleaned those up at the very beginning to where I just could not get enough characters out onto the board. He eventually stacked up 3 Queen of Hearts. I think he had 1 or 2 Gaston, and then there was 2 other villains out there, and he quested for, I think, 18 lore by turn 4 or 5. It was nuts. I think he had some Pluto or something out there where he can exert them for extra lore. So he was cooking fast, and he just took that game by Storm. I think he won 20 to like 5 in that one. It was it was a complete turnaround from the first game. And the second game, we were both getting everything we wanted on the board. Is again very fast paced. He's stacking Queen of Hearts out there and some other villains. I'm stacking out a bunch of my brooms, and I had I think 1 or 2 Yen Sids, and I got a Sorcerer Tower out there. And then the pivotal moment for me is I top decked a Mickey Mouse that allows me to bounce the brooms back to my hand instead of discard. So start moving everything into the tower, start questing. He would bounce out a couple of my brooms. They would just come back to my hand, and they were cheap brooms. So the next turn, I would just stick them all back out there again, and then put a couple more, move them all back in. And I got to, I want to say 18 lore real fast. And he had none. But he had, again, 3 Queen of Hearts out. And he had, I want to say, 3 or 4 other villains. He quested for 16 or 17 lore in one turn. And I was just, like, oh my gosh. But he didn't have enough to also take out some of my brooms or my tower. So at the end of the day, I ended up winning game 3 and taking that one. And I got my first round victory, my first actual victory, even though it was a 2-1 split. It felt great. I felt good about how I played, and kind of boosted my spirits a little bit, I feel bad for my opponent because that was, I think, the closest he got to winning a round. But again, we both just have some kind of casual decks. We didn't have competitive decks, and we just knew each other, and we knew each other's decks. So it was really well fought games. It was a really fun round to play on. And then we moved to round 3, or actually 4, and it was round 3 for me, but round 4, and I come up against an opponent who, he is a somewhat competitive player, and when I say that, I mean he and his girlfriend were traveling store to store and playing in leagues, mostly like local or, just local league play. But they were going store to store. They had about 4 or 5 different stores they'll hit up throughout the week, and they'll play. He introduced his deck as a troll deck. So I'm like, okay, what do we got here? It was a Ruby, I think, steel deck, but it was mostly Ruby. And it was a good one. I'm not even going to lie. It was a really good deck. I tried everything I could to slow him down or get around him, and it almost worked in game 1, but I came up just a little bit short in the end, and it crushed me. He had a lot of reckless characters, and 3 strength, 1 willpower, and I have a lot of brooms that are only 2/2, so we could swap characters left and right, but I could not get my Sorcerer Mickey out, so I was not bouncing brooms back to my hand. And every time I got a Sorcerer Tower and put it out, he would just demolish it. I mean, I maybe got 1 turn off each Sorcerer Tower, and he just wiped it out. It was kind of impressive, to be honest, because Sorcerer's Tower has 7 defense, 7 willpower, so it's kind of nuts. But I think I got to 17 lore in the first game, and we kept matching each other's pace the whole way up. But in the end, I just ran out of brooms. I had no more characters to play, and he had a couple of them. He had actually put into Thebes, and he had a lot of Super Goofs, a lot of legendary Robin Hoods, Champion of Sherwood, those types of things where you gain lore by questing, and then you also gain lore if you challenge, or you gain lore by challenging and banishing characters, and then you gain lore from Thebes every time you banish a character. So I mean, 1 challenge, he was getting 4 or 5 lore every time. So he just accelerated at the end way past what I could do. And game 2 was kind of similar. I did get the Sorcerer Mickey out there though, and I had 2 of my 6 cost brooms that had the ability, when you play them, you can exert an opponent's character and they can't ready up to serve their next turn. So there was, I want to say 3 or 4 turns where I would play them, exert one of his characters, and I would use my other broom to challenge something else and knock something out. It would bounce back to my hand. The next turn, he would play something. I would then play my other broom, exert something, use the second broom that was out the previous turn to challenge something, and I kind of had this cycle going, and it was helping me maintain where I was at. I think he was sitting at 19 lore for like 4 or 5 turns. He just couldn't get it. And he kept putting things into Thebes. So I knew as soon as he could challenge something, it was over for me. But I ran out of brooms again. I just didn't have enough. I was gaining, I think, I'm going to say 2 lore a turn, and it just wasn't enough. I got up to, I think, 12 lore, and then the magic ran out. He got 2 or 3 characters out in 1 turn. I couldn't challenge them all with my 2 big brooms, and then all he had to do was quest for 1 lore. So I took a 0-2 loss in round 4, and that one was a little bit more heartbreaking, but I honestly learned a lot from playing that. I learned a lot about what my deck can and cannot do, and kind of the bounds of my deck. So that was a good experience, and he was a class act, kind of helped me out throughout the way. There were some misplays. I definitely want to say it would not have changed the outcome, I don't think. It may have helped me get game 1 win. Maybe. It's a very small chance. But I misplayed a couple times by not drawing cards when I had Yensid played. I missed a couple opportunities to use the Sorcerer Mickey's pay 1 less ink for brooms. I missed that a couple times. And there was just some other mechanics. I think there was one time I played a Sorcerer Mickey and I got a broom bounce back and I put it in my discard instead of my hand, and I didn't catch it. So, there was just a couple missed opportunities for me. You just get in the heat of the moment. You get to thinking about the game. But overall, I learned from that, and I certainly did not make those mistakes again in the 5th round. But after the 4th round, they actually took an intermission so people could eat pizza and all that. So we had a 30-minute break. I went and just grabbed a pack of the first chapter because they had some available, and they're very well priced at my game store for $7. I'll take them all day long. So I opened a pack. Here's the pack right here. You guys can kind of see. I did get that nice Tinkerbell super rare foil. And I have an idea for some decks I want to do for her. I'm sure they're nothing original. I'm sure people have built decks like what I'm thinking of. But I'm going to try to build a deck maybe for next time we do some kind of competitive play. Or maybe casual. I don't know. But it was fun. It was a good little break. Got to rethink some strategy. Kind of guess at who my opponent may be based on the structure, and I got, like I said, to open a pack, so that was kind of fun. And then in between, they actually did some drawings for people to win a couple free packs from the prize pool, and I actually won one of those packs. So I have a Floodborn, Rise of the Floodborn pack here. I'm not going to open it right now. We'll probably do a short or something on it, but I did win that pack, so that was kind of cool. At least I came up with something, And then we went into round 5, the final round before Top Cut. And I knew at this point there was no chance I was making Top Cut, but I wanted to go out with a bang. I wanted to prove to myself I was good enough to pilot this deck and play in a league. And man, fate would have it that they wanted to challenge me. So I get paired up against, again, a very awesome person, and she had a Princess song deck. Again, this one was even more heavily song based than the first one, and I kind of knew what her deck was running a little bit because one of my opponents had expressed some frustration about her deck and how she just locked him out of the game and he couldn't even play. She swept him 2-0. So I'm just sitting here going, oh great, I'm playing another yellow steel deck, song deck, and it's not going to go well. But I surprised myself. I learned from my previous mistakes. I didn't just try to get a couple brooms out and a Mickey or a tower or anything like that out. My plan at this point, especially because right out of the rip, she was playing low-cost characters that could sing for 3 or 4, and she had the Ariel, she had Cinderella, all these things that have singer whatever, and she's playing song after song. Got 2 of the Sleepy Flutes out. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to flood the board with all of my low-cost brooms. And I fortunately got a good hand and a couple good top decks to get some really low-cost brooms. So I think by turn 3, I had about 5 or 6 brooms out. Didn't even care about Yensid or Mickey or Tower at that point. I was just trying to get as many of them out as I could because all of her princesses are pretty low challenge cost. So I could knock most of them out and still survive with my brooms. And then she can't sing songs at that point, or she has to pay full cost for songs. And it worked because it slowed her down tremendously. She had, I think by turn 4 or 5, had no characters on the board, and you can tell she's getting a little frustrated because she had a bunch of songs she wanted to play, and she would still play songs, Grab Your Swords or Here Comes Zeus, something like that, to take out as much as she could. But once I got her board kind of completely emptied, then I would bring out the Yen Sid or the Mickey Mouse or the Tower, or all three if I could, and start my whole gimmick and just race for lore as fast as I could, because I knew if I don't start going for lore, she's going to keep drawing songs. Even if she doesn't have the singers, she'll just pay full cost to song, and then knock out half my army of brooms. And honestly, it worked. I outpaced her pretty quickly. And these games for the final round were fast-paced, man. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 seconds a turn, each of us. We're just playing cards, go. Okay, she's playing cards, go. I'm playing cards. It was intense. And I took the first game, I think it was like 20-14 or something like that. I just slowed her down enough to where I could gain a little bit of an advantage, and I never let go, and it worked. And then second game, I tried doing the same thing, and she knew what I was going to try to do, so she started getting a bunch more of her low-cost singers out first before she started singing, and did not challenge any of my brooms, but just kept questing with them until she could get to the point where she could start slapping songs down. And I made the mistake of not challenging enough of her singers at the beginning, because she was gaining 3-4 lore each turn. I felt like I had to do the same thing to try to keep up. So I was questing with, let's say 2 brooms a turn to get 2 lore, and then using my other broom or 2 to knock out some princesses. And that was an incredibly intense game, and it came down to the final moment where I had a Sorcerer Tower out. I had, I think, 3 brooms in there and a Yen Sid, and I think that's all I had out on the board. She had 2 or 3 princesses. She had the Shift Aerial? I think it was Shift Aerial out with 3 attack, 8 defense, and she pulled out the card, I forget whatever it is, but you can banish a location, and she got rid of my Sorcerer's Tower, and then it crumbled for me there. I couldn't get enough lore fast enough to compete with her. She had this 2 or 3 Sleepy Flutes out again, and just beat me to the end just by a hair. I think it was like 20-17. It was a very, very close game. And then third game, I'm just like, you know what? We're doing this again. We're going ham. I'm just going to flood the board with brooms. I'm going to take out everything. She'll eventually run out of characters to play her songs. I've got brooms on brooms on brooms. I'm not worried about it. And that strategy worked fantastically for me. I got quite a few brooms out. I got my Sorcerer Mickey out. I think I even had 2 Yen Sids out at one point. I just had a stacked board. She could not get enough songs to take them out fast enough. And then when she did try to challenge them, those brooms would just come right back to my hand, and next turn I'm slapping them back out again. And having the Yen Sids and the Mickeys out there, she was trying to target them more than my brooms. But even when she did that, she'd take out 1 or 2 Yen Sids. I would come out with 4 brooms the next turn, and it was just overwhelming. And I just stormed my way to victory in the final game. Again, it was a really good battle. I think it ended up being like 20-12, somewhere around there. She just couldn't keep up with me in the end. But I figured out how to beat the yellow song decks, and it felt great because I started off the whole tournament with those yellow song decks, and it just demolished me. It crushed my soul with it. And then I ended on the yellow song decks, and I found out how to get around it with this deck. And, just overall, I felt like I learned a lot about, just gameplay in general, but also my deck and just kind of how all these other decks work. And, I finished in 15th place out of 20, which is not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible for what it is. I'm happy with that placement, especially because I ended up actually getting a round 1 loss because I was a little bit late. Again, my fault, but it just kind of sits there, makes me wonder, like, if I would have won that first round, if I played and won, where would I have been? And I think the number 8 person was 3-2. And I feel like maybe that could have been me, but it wasn't. So it's okay. And then top 8, they went down and I just didn't even stay around. It was already getting late and had other things to do, so I left. But I think in the top 8, there were 4 Bucky Diablos, and the rest, I think, were Ruby, Sapphire, Sisu decks. So, typical meta stuff, which is fine. But overall, I had a great time. Went 2-3 officially, and it was just a fun experience. My actual gameplay, I went 2-2, so I'm happy about that. I didn't just get crushed and swept away. I actually did some sweeping away of my own, so I'm happy with it. It was a lot of fun, and overall, it was a great experience. I can't wait to do it again. But you guys let me know what your experience is playing Lorcana has been like. Do you enjoy it? Have you played in the set championship, and what are some of your keys to success, or what are some things you learned along the way? Go ahead and drop them in the comments down below. Other people will likely benefit from what you're saying, so just leave those comments down there. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and just listening to my story of my first set championship. I hope you all have a good one. We'll see you soon.